okay, this was a really good start here when you did this. Now let's see if you can try this. Then everything, bing, 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 everything lit up on the MRI. So what they got to see was before kids are about 11 years old, they don't even really process negative feedback. Not that, you should be positive with your children. And I mean, all that's probably true too. But the point is their brains don't even process when you say, don't do this, or don't forget to do that, or whatever.
Hello everyone. So our guest today has multiple feathers in her cap. She's not only a co-edited co-author of Brain Stages, How to Raise Smart, Confident Kids and Have Fun Doing It. She also facilitates life-changing workshops for parents and teachers. She's the mother of 2 and has taught kids aged 2 to 17 over 23 years. She lives in Bend, Oregon, with her husband Chuck and their rambunctious golden retriever, Alice. Without further ado, let's welcome Trish. Hello, Trish. How are you?
Hi, I'm great. I'm so excited to be here talking to people in India. How exciting.
Amazing. Okay. So, Trish, how's the situation been out there? Times are different and it has taken a full turn now. What are your...
It has taken a full turn now. So I'm sure, just like India, we just had to shut down again here in Central Oregon because we were doing really well. Kids were going back to school, but then, high schoolers started having parties and people are tired of wearing masks and just getting a little more lax, like not even intentionally necessarily. And we've had a spike in cases again. So everything's shut down again. So we went from, yay, this is finally getting over to, here we go again.
I can understand. Situation is bad out there, really bad. Okay, so Trish, apart from this, we would love to hear about your journey. How did you start from, you've been an author as well and, a mother of 2. How do you manage it all?
So, it's not really about, let's just, in a nutshell, what happened was I had been through college, I taught preschool. And then by the time I graduated from college, I had taught several grades in elementary school. And by the time my husband and I decided to have our own kids, I thought, I know kids. I'm good at kids. This is my thing. I'm going to be great at this. Raising kids is going to be a blast. And then we got a couple of kids who had challenges. And I was good at working with other people's kids who had challenges like attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Their brains work differently. They are not deficient, nor are they disordered. And I have 2 of those, and I can attest to you, when we work with kids with how their brains work, instead of telling them there's something wrong with them outside when they're outside the mainstream, our kids are super successful now. In fact, it was our kids that said, Mom, you have to coach other parents. And my husband said, Trish, you got to write a book. Because I found everything out the hard way. Remember, so our kids are 20 somethings now, and they're super successful now. But if you had told me when they were, little, your kids are going to grow up to be, 20 somethings who have fulfilling careers and lasting, healthy relationships with friends and partners. And, I would have laughed and said, well, Guy, I hope you're right, because I just felt lost raising these kids. So when my older daughter was 7 years old, we got into a big, she screamed at me, Mom, you lost my homework. And I had just helped her with her homework and told her a couple hours before to put it in her backpack. She forgot. She was freaking out. She didn't have it. But I was alone a lot. My husband traveled a lot for work, and I had it up to here. I don't know if anyone else out there has ever felt that way.
There are many out there who must have felt that way.
Yes. So I lost it all right, but it wasn't her homework. I lost it with her. And we just had this shouting match. It was terrible. And, she was only 7 years old. And I thought, I got in bed that night and I thought, Trish, how is this possible? Kids, and you are a terrible mom. And So it was then that I resolved, I'm going to figure this out. I am going to figure out how to raise these kids into the adults, the healthy, wonderful humans they deserve to become. Anyway, so that's what started this whole journey. I talked to loads of professionals, which many professionals are clueless about kids who have attention issues and autism and all kinds of things, because there's a lot of really recent research that's been out. But in the last couple of decades, there has been so much exciting brain research that's come out. And so I just read everything I could get my hands on and did a lot of trial and error. In my background, I have a degree in recreation therapy. So I teach a lot of things, or taught a lot of things through play. And now I coach other parents. And so I wrote Brain Stages. This is a book, Brain Stages: How to Raise Smart, Confident Kids and Have Fun Doing It. Because there are loads of games in the book. It's like, okay, this is kind of what's going on in your kids' brains. And these are kind of the things they're supposed to know at this age. And here are a whole bunch of games to play with them so that you can have fun with your kids in the car, in line at the grocery store, or in the doctor's office, or, just whatever. Although right now we're not going out a lot.
Right.
But you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So now it can be while you're cooking dinner or folding the laundry or, whatever you're doing at home. Games you can play with your kids that actually, help develop different parts of their brain. So through a lot of trial and error, I came up with communication tools and learning tools and literally things that work out with just shifts in people's routines that help them literally boost kids' brain power, like physical things you can do with your kids just by changing, a little bit of change in their diet, or just making sure they get a drink of water in the morning, because most of us wake up dehydrated. So we have breakfast, but we don't necessarily know, hey, if you just have your kids drink a great big glass of water in the morning, then by the time before they go to school, although right now that's a little different, but when they get a drink of water in the morning before they're doing online school or going to school, because hopefully eventually we'll be going back to school, it literally gets their brains ready for learning, because our brains are 73% water. So it's kind of like when we don't drink enough water in the morning, it's kind of like riding a bike on flat tires. You can do it, but not that great.
Not that efficiently.
Right. Whereas when you fill up the tires, your bike just, imagine that, works so much better. And it's kind of the same thing with kids and their brains and drinking water in the morning. I mean, just all these things I figured out on this journey of figuring out how I was going to get my kids to be able to grow up to be successful humans. And so now I coach other parents on how to do these things, because it's all so doable.
I think you're doing an amazing job out there. I think it is the need of the hour. Everyone needs some guidance and support in one way or the other, because kids nowadays are so different. Even if I compare myself to my brother, he's so different than I am. Like the generation gap is so much. We're just like 5 years.
Is
5
he
years
older or younger?
He's younger to me.
Oh, he's younger.
5 years.
Huh?
Yeah, 5 years. Yeah, but his thinking pattern is so different than me. Besides the personality, it's so different. A lot of time I just can't relate. Like, why? What is he saying? Why is he saying like that? Sometimes he just acts very mature, and sometimes he doesn't. So it's very
Which
good.
is kind of like all of us. We just do that a little differently, because we're all in the process of becoming, right? We're all growing up. Hopefully we never stop doing that.
Of course.
Still learning things all the time, So
life is a process of learning. Yeah.
So and there's a lot more online stuff going on now. So and it's because our kids are getting more of a world view. Our lives are more complicated now. Like a lot of times it takes parents a while to ask me for help, because they feel like, they should know how to raise their own kids. But somebody has to teach us how to put on our clothes and how to use a fork. Why do we think that the most important thing that we do in our whole lives, or certainly one of them, is raising our children, and our world is changing so quickly? How do we know how to raise successful kids in this complicated, competitive world we live in? And it turns out it's not that it's hard, it's just knowing some key things on the road to being able to do that.
Yeah, and doing it right. Just and I think trial and errors are a part of life. You can just learn, you just keep learning from your mistakes again and again, and finally you have reached your benchmark. Oh, this is what I'm striving for, and this is what I have to go for.
Right.
I think everyone is just figuring it out, and parents, as you said, even if you won't have to learn how to wear clothes, you learn it, right? But with parenting, it's something everyone feels that's something you should be perfect at. You don't need any coaching or learning for it.
Right. And I always tell parents there's no such thing as perfection. You don't have to be perfect, just intentional. Just pay attention to what you're doing. And that's why, so for example, one of the things people will tell me all the time with teenagers or kids who are in the upper elementary grades, they don't listen to me anymore and they don't talk to me anymore. And part of it is how we talk to them and how we listen to them. So for example, instead of asking them questions, when we ask them questions a lot, how was school today? Fine. And they walk away, right? It was fine. It was great. And they just leave. Or, whereas if you just acknowledge them when they come in the door, or so right now they're online. If you just say, instead of saying, well, how was your class? Notice how they look, the look on their face. You look really thoughtful. And then allow them to talk and listen. A lot of times they'll talk and listen. But when you say, how was school today, especially a little kid, a lot of times there's just too much to tell you and they can't remember it all at once. And it's confusing. Whereas if you can just look at them when they walk in the door, or look at them after they've been on the computer and tell them what you notice, they'll usually tell you what's on their mind and what they're thinking. And that's even more important for middle school and high school kids because they're trying to separate and individuate from their parents. So they're actually really fun because they have a lot of fresh ideas about things because things are so new to them and how they're becoming individuals, right? But we need to become really good listeners to be able to listen to them so that when we do say something to them, it's interesting to them, and they can process it. Does that make sense? I feel like I'm doing a lot of talking now, but you've heard the saying, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, use them accordingly. And I think a lot of times we forget that as parents. And when we listen to our kids and we just tell them what we observe, they'll tell us all kinds of things. Because what I realized when I was raising my kids was I would have a lot of preconceived notions. I would think that they were thinking certain things because of their behavior and things that happened. So I would be, I'd have a certain view in my head of what was going on. And then I would tell them an observation, you look really thoughtful, or wow, you look angry, or that's a happy face, or, whatever I noticed, whatever is going on with them. And then they would start talking and I'd think in my head, boy, I'm glad I didn't say that because it was completely different than whatever was going on with them, even though I felt like I knew them really well. So and if we can teach our kids some of these communication skills, what a gift, right? Because so many people have such a hard time listening or knowing how to elicit responses out of other people.
Yeah, very true. I think listening is very important. Most of us, the time, we just want to kind of answer back rather than listening. You just want to answer. You don't want to listen. And
you want to fix things for them. And they, a lot of times they will fix things themselves, because if we listen to them and we just nod our heads and go, oh, yeah, or, whatever, just those little responses, a lot of times they'll talk themselves through it and come up with a solution we didn't even think of.
Very true. That's very,
great.
Yeah, that is what we actually want, to grow, to let them grow on their own. Because if we keep giving them instructions all the time, telling them to do this or that, this will just hamper their growth in one way or the other.
Well, and we want them to become problem solvers. We want them to learn how to solve issues that come up, because eventually someday they're going to have their own families. eventually someday they're going to be working for someone, or maybe have their own business, or, whatever their future holds. We want them to be able to work through things that come up for them. And how do they do that if we never give them a chance?
Very just about giving a little bit of a chance and, being accepting to what they are saying. And let's see what will happen. Let them make mistakes and let them learn from it. So, Trish, as you were saying about online classes, we have been gravitating towards online classes. Everything is online now. So how are kids accepting it? And what's your take on the same?
So I think, I'm excited about online everything. For one thing, some kids who had issues where they weren't learning well in a classroom before, now there's all kinds of specialized education. It's like I was looking on BaaBee TV. So I love that you're teaching languages and you're teaching them with age groups. And the reason for that is because, so for example, if kids learn languages, if they start before they're 9 years old and they learn from a native speaker, they won't have an accent. And the reason is when we're born with like a bazillion neurons. And how we become who we are is our brains whittle away what we're not using. So it's kind of like a sculpture. It starts as a big rock and the sculptor works on it until it forms a shape of something. And our brains kind of do the same thing. So we actually are born with neurons for learning multiple languages. So if we start before we're 9 years old on learning those languages, we not only learn the language much quicker and we can process in both languages, but we also can speak the language as a native speaker would speak if that's what we've been hearing. Yes. Does that make sense?
It does. I myself have learned a foreign language.
Languages and public speaking. I mean, all those things that you're doing are amazing, especially for younger kids. And it's interactive learning. And what we're finding out science-wise is that kind of learning is what really solidifies in kids' brains for how our brains grow and function and develop and how our brains learn, because it's more experiential. So if we're stuck inside, if they have an opportunity to do two-way experiential learning and learn in a group and learn lessons and practice it with other people, I mean, for some of these kids, this inside learning online has been a boon for them. But it also depends on what's available to kids. There are several kids that I've worked with who they don't have great technology. And, they just don't have access to it. And I don't know what it's like in India, but a lot of our libraries have been really limited as to how many people they'll let in and who can be on the computers. So some of these kids don't have access to electronics, and then that's a problem. So the things that are available online, if you have the electronics that are available, it's beautiful. But some kids are having a hard time, like with conventional school here, they're having a hard time because teachers are having a hard time adjusting to how to teach through online learning. So it's been great that there are all these other companies that are stepping up that are saying, okay, the teachers are having a hard time doing this. Let's offer you really affordable classes to, enhance the language centers of your brain, like I noticed you were doing a class on poetry, which is amazing, and public speaking, and all of those kind of interactive things, because people are worried about screen time. The kind of screen time that hurts kids is too much social media and too much video games. And it's because of the rewiring in the brain and the serotonin and dopamine dumps that happen in the brain. It's the happy hormones. And when they do too much online gaming, for example, their brains start looking like drug addicted brains. People who are addicted to heroin and crystal meth and alcohol look the same when they're addicted to computer games. So that part is not great, but computers are amazing. In fact, one of the things that I was offering, I have a link to what the science says so far about computers and how to keep your kids healthy with screen time. Because it's not like they can never play games. That's not what I'm saying. Or it's not like they can never be on social media. But we just have to limit their time. for how much they can be on and what's healthy for brains and what's not. And are screens rewiring kids' brains? Yeah, they are, but in some ways in a good way. Is it still good for kids to read physical books and to write with a pen or a pencil? Yes, because it works different parts of their brains. But does it mean it's bad for kids to be on screens when they're learning? No, not at all. So that's if you want to give them that. And for a time, I guess through May 31st, that I have a code for you where people can get it for free, but it's not expensive anyway. It's like 19 American dollars. I mean, it's not huge anyway, but all your listeners or whatever viewers can get it for free, because I just feel like it's so important.
That's amazing. Thank you for that, Trish. I think the audience can get a lot of insights from it as well. And you were talking about that you have written in the book a lot of games that parents can play with kids. So how can we include gamification in learning? What is the right approach to pick it up?
Oh my gosh. So games are the shortcut to learning. I don't know if we set up to share screens. So I'm going to play a little game with you right now, if that's okay.
Yeah,
we're going to play a game. We're going to play a game called Add a Move. I'm going to make a move, then you're going to make the same move and add one more. Then I'm going to do both moves and add another one. And we're just going to do a few rounds. I just want to show parents this. And then if it's okay, and I can share my screen, I can show all the things I can show all the areas of the brain that works.
That's amazing.
This little simple game we're going to play. Okay, so let's start with.
You want to share your screen? I'll make you the host. Okay.
I'm just going to play the game first, and then I'll show what this game does. So.
Okay.
Okay, so you get the idea. You just keep adding a move. And when somebody misses, you go, oh, somebody missed. And then you pick somebody else to play the game. Whether you have one child or 12, it keeps them busy. It's really fun. And they can also do it in stealth mode. Like you just have them do quiet moves. Right. So even if you're in public and you're trying to keep them all, like herding cats sometimes, right? But you can keep them all together and behaving and engaged. And look at all the stuff it does for their brains. So
amazing.
I'm gonna.
And I'll just make you the host, and then you can share the screen.
Okay, but for some reason my mouse isn't coming over. Really? Because I have it on a separate screen.
Okay. You can try.
So you know what I'm going to do?
Yeah, tell me.
I'm going to move this over, okay?
Okay.
So now I should be able to share it. So you may have to edit this a bit.
No problem.
Okay, so here we are. So that little game, look at all the areas of the brain that little game works. So it's the frontal lobe for thinking and memory. Do you see that? So this area, it works thinking and memory. This little game you just played with your kids in line at the grocery store, right? It doesn't work for language, but it's great for touch and vision. They're looking, it's color perception. It's, how their visual, balance and coordination. Not so much the brainstem, but the temporal lobe. So learning and feelings, it just that little game, because they're playing this little game and it's working all those areas of their brain. Here's the other.
I never thought it that way. Yeah.
Yeah, but here's the other really cool thing it does. So if you have kids who are uptight, and this even works for middle school and high school kids, right? Whether they're teeny tiny or they're almost grown-ups. So what happens when you play a game like that, especially in a stressful situation? So here's the little guy in here called the amygdala. And the amygdala is in the limbic system of the brain, the emotion centers of the brain. And that's your fight or flight system. And when kids get anxious, it's because there's been like, it's almost like a poke in the chest. It's this constant, just low level of cortisol that gets released in the amygdala. So they're just uptight all the time, even though they don't need to be. This is something that happens particularly with kids who have been through any kind of trauma. But most of us have had a traumatic situation in some way or another, right?
You all have.
It could have had nothing to do with our family. It could have been, who knows? Most of us have had some kind of traumatic situation. So what happens is our brain triggers in ways that it doesn't need to. So if you have a child who's stressed about anything, whether they're going to be taking a test or they're upset about something that went on with a friend, or they're nervous about trying out for something, whatever it is that they get anxious about, if you play a little game like this, they start here in the limbic system and it moves them from the limbic system into the frontal lobes. So it moves them from here into this part of their brain. Does that make sense?
It does.
And the reason for that is because all of a sudden they have to think about the movement. They have to watch, they have to think, they have to control. So they're they go from the emotion centers of the brain to the thinking centers of the brain.
Right. It's very
so
intriguing.
These little games. So Brain Stages is a grade by grade guide for kindergarten through 5th grade. But it doesn't, and it's basically age levels, but there are all kinds of games. Some of them, they need a few things you might have around the house, but a lot of things are just things like Add a Move that don't require any materials at all, that teach different kinds of things, whether it's number patterns or language patterns or sounds or, so it's great for kids who are learning to read. There are all kinds of memory devices and different things as kids get older, how to help them remember things that they need to know for school and just all that because when kids can play and do something in the spirit of fun and it's an experiential movement thing, then they learn a lot better. And here's another really cool thing. So this kind of long thing around here is a hippocampus. Right. That's long-term memory. Well, right next to the hippocampus is a caudate nucleus. And I used to have my kids in my classroom, as well as my own kids, exercise first thing in the morning because I used to get better results from my kids when they exercised in the morning. So, and we only had time for like 10 minutes of exercise. I didn't have time to do a lot. So, we run a few laps in the morning, or we dance for 10 minutes to a song, or we play a really lively game of head and shoulders, knees and toes.
Yeah.
or whatever. But we do that for 10 minutes, get their heart rates up, and then we would start school. Well, what I didn't know at the time, and a lot of times we jump roped. Jump rope was big because you can get a lot of heart rate increase in a short amount of time. It's a great workout. In 10 minutes, have them jump 100 times and see how many times they can jump without missing. And it doesn't matter how many times they jump without missing. It just matters to have them jump for 10 minutes.
Right.
And what I found out later, and my scores were always at the top, and I taught all these different grades. And people would say, Trish, you must be such a great teacher. But I really think it had to do with they got a big drink of water in the morning and they exercised for 10 minutes in the morning, because that really primes the brain for learning. And so parents who are watching this now, especially if your kids are doing work at home, are doing schoolwork at home, if you have them drink a big glass of water and put on a YouTube that they can dance to or kickbox or, whatever your kids are into, or, get out a jump rope and jump rope for 10 minutes, that gets all the stuff in the brain working. And here's the thing. So what I found out in all my studying and writing Brain Stages was the hippocampus is right next to the caudate nucleus. The caudate nucleus is in charge of short-term learning, short-term memory, and movement.
Oh, okay.
And what happens is when they're learning things in short-term memory and they've had the movement, so all this stuff is working really, it's working in their brains, what they learn from short-term memory gets transferred easier, and during that time into long-term memory, which is in the hippocampus. Ta-da! Did I know this at the time? No, it was complete luck. But it worked for my own kids who had issues, and it worked with all the grades that I taught, even older kids. At first, especially middle school and high school kids are like, Mom, I don't want to work out. Or, the teacher, oh, Mrs. Wilkinson, I don't want to move. I'm tired. And I'd say, well, we're going to work out for 10 minutes and it's going to give you energy. And then we'll get started. And they ended up loving it. In fact, if we had an assembly we had to go to or whatever, and they'd go, oh, we didn't get to do our workout. And I would tell you, I didn't get nearly the quality work that day either, if we didn't, spend that 10 minutes. And you're spending time to get time. It's one of those things where, if you put that 10 minutes in, you just get so much more from learning than you would have if you didn't.
It really energizes the brain. Very true.
And it's just getting everything working.
And that's what we want. Ready. Right. That's amazing. The way you have explained and shared everything, I think it's very intriguing to the audience as well. Like little games and activities that everyone can play and how they can help them out. Okay, so Trish, you have dealt with age group 2 to 17. Which age group do you think is the most challenging to deal with?
You're not going to like this answer. It's not going to be fulfilling. I love them all for different reasons. So, toddlers are a blast because everything is brand new and they come up with literal interpretations of things that are just adorable and so fun. And do toddlers throw tantrums and stuff? Yeah, but so what? I know how to deal with that now. So I don't care. I know how to get them out of the tantrum quickly and get them distracted and into other things. So I don't care about that stuff very much. So little kids are really fun. And then when they get into elementary school, the early grades, then they're discovering how to read, and that's just really fun too. And they're really black and white. Everything they interpret is very literal, right? So, oh my gosh. So I have to tell you this, all the parents out there need to know, before kids are 11 years old, scientists have figured out that they can't really interpret things like sarcasm. And I've had several parents say, oh, well, my child, they grew up with it. They understand sarcasm. No, they don't, because their brains don't have the neural pathways to do it. They're very black and white. And here's a great illustration. So I would get frustrated with my kids sometimes, or just frustrated in life. Sometimes it had nothing to do with them. And I would say, oh my gosh, I'm just going to go to Puerto Rico and live in a tree, which I thought was the most ridiculous thing. So they would know I was kidding. But they told me later, it was really funny because they were both in college and they came home for Christmas. And we were talking around the table and they were laughing, saying, remember when we kept wondering if we'd come home and find Mom was gone because she went to Puerto Rico to live in a tree? Because kids are really literal. And we think that they're not going to interpret it, that they'll know that we're joking. And just sarcasm is not a great way to joke with kids. They just don't get it. They love plays on words. When kids are little, like 6, 7 years old, 5, 6, 7 years old, they love when you're just silly and they love surprises. By the time they're 7, 8 years old, they start understanding plays on words, puns, things that have more than one meaning, and they love that kind of stuff. And then as they get older, they love more surprises and things that are clever and things that are, they love humor, but they don't understand a lot of figurative language yet. They're just starting in the later grades when they're like 9 and 10. they're just starting to understand figurative language. When you talk in metaphor, when you say something in a metaphor, they're just starting to get that. And when they're in middle school and high school, you don't want to use sarcasm anyway, because they're super sensitive. Even when they don't seem like they are. Even when they put a good face on it, yeah, that's funny, Dad or Mom or whatever. It secretly inside, they're wondering, did they really mean that? What did they really mean
something
by
else?
that? Yeah. So it's
I think the self-doubt is one thing that really gets
so,
them in one way or the other. I might not even understand what they are saying. Are they saying something else? Is it different from what I am understanding? So that really gets them in one way or the other.
Right. So I just want to, there are some developmental things. I mean, our kids see really in black and white until they're about 11 years old. And another thing that's really helpful for parents to know, kids before they're about 11 don't really process the words no and don't when they're in the context of giving directions. Does that make sense? So if you say, don't forget to put your plate on the sink or in the dishwasher, whatever you do after a meal, don't forget to do that. It takes a while for their brain. Scientists think it's because they have to turn over the interpretation, right? So instead of put your plate somewhere and then they have to be don't. Like I always used to tell people at workshops, instead of saying to your child, don't run in the street. They're little kids, and what do they hear first? They hear run in the street, right? And then they're in the street before they realize, oh no, she said don't. And so it works a lot better to say, come stand next to me, or come help me open the door, or, whatever. Because if we tell our kids what to do instead of what not to do, we're going to get a lot better cooperation because their brains process it faster.
I think this is very.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's very new. I think everyone can take that insight from yours. It's very new. Even I didn't kind of know about it. That no's and don'ts.
It's fairly new research.
Right.
It's fairly new research. In fact, it was a Dutch study that first uncovered this, I think, in 2008, where they were actually trying to find out what kind of feedback worked best for students for helping them correct things that they had done wrong. And they were working on negative feedback, what kind of feedback. And what they realized with kids before they were 11 years old, when they were giving them this kind of, you shouldn't have done it this way, kind of attitude, this didn't work, that didn't work, nothing was lighting up on the MRI. Like it was just silent. Whereas when they said to them, okay, this was a really good start here when you did this. Now let's see if you can try this. Then everything, bing, 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 everything lit up on the MRI. So what they got to see was before kids are about 11 years old, they don't even really process negative feedback. Not that, oh, you should be positive with your children. And I mean, all that's probably true too. But the point is their brains don't even process when you say, don't do this, or don't forget to do that, or whatever. Whereas if we tell them what to do or where they started well and what they can do next, huge difference in how they function and learn and behave actually too.
That's amazing. I think I can relate that too, because when we were young, we also used to get a lot of instructions. Don't do this, don't do that. I always used to do the opposite thing. Don't used to just, go away. It used to be missing from the instruction that was given.
Right. And when we say don't, a lot of times we end up with, negative feelings from them. Like, don't tell me what to do.
Yeah. I mean, that's also there.
They have that. Whereas if you say, okay, remember to put your dish on the sink, or, okay, remember to, or jacket. Another thing I tell parents too is just use one word. If your child already knows to put their dishes, but they just on the counter or in the dishwasher or whatever, if you already have a rule in your house, you don't have to say the whole thing. Just go, uh-oh, dishes. And then they go, oh, and they go get them. right?
Yeah.
We don't have to go through a whole explanation on, whatever, just the one word, and they remember and they do it.
Enough.
And it's enough. And then there's a positive feeling instead of a negative feeling. Like, mom was just reminding me, instead of, or
just
trash
saying this
can,
again.
if they're supposed to empty the trash can, or, whatever, in a positive, kind of a light voice, instead of going, oh my gosh, you forgot to take out the trash again, because we may be feeling that, right? But if we just remind them with a word to do whatever, they leave their shoes out again and people are tripping over them. So if we just go, shoes, and then they pick up their shoes. That was just such a magical realization for me, to realize that I could do that. And I just go, oh my gosh, that was so easy.
Yeah.
I should have been doing that but try not to do the should haves. If you're watching this and you try some of these things and you go, oh my gosh, it worked so well. Try not to do that to yourself, because you didn't know what you didn't know. So now you know.
Now you can practice.
Right.
I think I'll use that for myself too, for, telling other people in my house.
Yeah, because most of the time people want to do what they're supposed to do, right? I mean, isn't that true? Most of the time, they're not taking their dishes out to be obstinate. They just forgot, or they're not right, or they're not doing things to be a problem. They are, there's just a lot going on, especially right now with all the video things and all the changes people have had to go through. And, there's been a lot of adjustment for a lot of people, for families, for kids, for, working at home versus going to an office to work, and having your kids all around you when you're trying to get your work done. I've been working with parents a lot on that. Like, how do we set this up so we're not all going crazy, right? So
right. I think we all have to deal with it, the new normal that we are in. We are still adjusting. We are still taking our time to figure things out.
Not serving our kids in the best possible way. Does that make sense?
Right.
I just,
it does.
And what you're doing with BaaBee TV, with this kind of interactive things that they're learning. I've been going through your website, and I love what you're doing with this to help parents with your podcast. Just also, if there's anything I can do to help, like if you send me the link, I'll send the recordings so that people can see on all my platforms the interview.
Amazing.
But so I'll do that and put. But if there's some other way you can think of that I can support you in what you're doing, I would love to.
No, it means a lot. Of course, we look up to you. If anything is there, that really means a lot.
Yeah, no, definitely. I couldn't believe on LinkedIn, oh my gosh, this person connected with me in India. Let's talk to India. Because people need help all over the world. I was just talking to somebody in Switzerland recently too.
Okay.
I mean, that's the cool thing about what's happened with this whole, since we're getting global, we might as well share some really positive things that are global instead of, all the other things. So do you mind, the last thing to help parents, is there anything else I want to say? Do you mind if I talk about the free problem solving course, to maybe if they want to figure out how to work out a better system at home?
Of course.
And I'll make sure you have those two links.
The links, yes. Please do share that with me once again. And I'll make sure to put it with the video. This video, when it get uploaded, I'll make sure that the links are there within the video. And like I said earlier, we are open to all these things. So no hassle here. So Trish, thank you so much for all these insights. It was lovely having you here. As a takeaway, what advice would you like to give to our parents and children out there? How to maintain a work-life balance, how to maintain their sanity in this new normal?
I would say work together as a family to figure out what your schedules are going to be, how you're going to work around each other. And if you work together to come up with a plan, your kids will help you to be able to keep the plan and to, like a lot of times we have great intentions, right? And we come up with these great ideas. but then it's hard to follow through. Sometimes the follow through is the hardest part, right? Whereas when we work with our kids and our kids are part of the solution to figure out how to work out whatever we're dealing with, in this case, it's with parents and kids both trying to do work and school at home and, all the new normal stuff, come up with a system together that works together in a schedule. In fact, I have a problem solving course that's only 2 videos. It's actually 1 video and a bonus video. But it shows parents how to walk through these steps to work out with their kids how they're going to set up their new normal in their home. So sorry I wasn't here a year ago when all this first started happening. But really, you can't believe that the difference it'll make. This has been a game changer for so many families to just go through this. It's like a 6-step process. And they can go through it and come up with a new normal with their kids. And then the kids will help you figure out, you'll work together on following through with it. So you make the new schedule work for you. And the first video is talking you through how to put that together and how to make that work. And it's like, 20 minutes. And there's a reflection page so you can personalize it all with what works for your family, and then sit down with your family, with your kids, and both adults, if there are more than one adult in the household, or all adults, whoever lives there, to all work together and be on the same page so that you know what you're doing and how you're creating this. And, it takes like a half an hour to do it as a family and saves so much time. You just can't believe. It saves a lot of time and just makes the home so much happier, and the kids are doing better. You're doing better. It's a great thing. So, and I'll give you a coupon code so people can get it for free through the end of the month.
That's amazing. I think everyone will look forward to that. And it's very nice of you to share that with us, free of cost, of course. It's amazing. Thank you.
And thank you for having me. This has been really fun.
Thank you for joining. Thank you for taking the time out. I know you're super busy with all the coaching that you do throughout the day. And it was really nice having you here.
So, thank you for having me. I had a good time.